Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is Ernie Epp, Professor Emeritus in the Department of History at Lakehead University. Welcome, Ernie.
It's a pleasure to be here, Steve.
Now, what the heck does that mean, Professor Emeritus? What is that word?
It's a title that universities award to faculty members when they retire. It recognizes the fact that they have accumulated a great deal of knowledge, if you will. They have demonstrated this in teaching and research and so on and so forth. And so the university says, you remain a professor, but emeritus now, you're not no longer a professor of history teaching. Although I still do teach a course every winter in environmental history. I do that as an adjunct, though, while at the same time being now Professor Emeritus.
So you're both an adjunct and an emeritus.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, double dipping, you know.
Well, we're so glad to have you here because here you have retired, but you're continuing to do good work, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But before we do, let's find out a little bit more about Ernie Epp. Now, give us some of your background. Where did you grow up, Ernie?
I grew up in Manitoba on a farm about 50 miles from Winnipeg. I think fondly of that farm and the little country school, 5 years in the one-room country school, and then 4 years in the next one, and then a small high school in Elm Creek. The Elm Creek High School was where I completed my high school education, and then off to the University of Manitoba. 4 years, an honors history degree as the honors program as it was organized, and then off to the Johns Hopkins for graduate work in Baltimore, Maryland.
Down in the States.
That's right.
Okay, and so you did your master's there?
I didn't actually do a master's. They had an accelerated PhD program. It only took me 9 years on the accelerated program to achieve the PhD, but and I could have paid some money and taken a master's degree en route, but since I was teaching in British Columbia at Notre Dame University of Nelson in the Kootenays, and they accepted my assertion, certified of course by the Johns Hopkins, that I had completed the coursework and was writing the thesis, and with that I would have a doctorate.
And so how did you end up in Thunder Bay?
Well, I taught at Notre Dame of Nelson, served as Dean of Academic Studies the last 2 years, and then social credit government decided to close the place down. And so I, thanks to a friend who was chair of the department at the University of Saskatchewan, I took the family to Saskatoon for a year, and there was someone there who had a good friend, Dr. Ernest Zimmerman, who has used this facility many times for interviews over the years, that they were looking for a Canadian historian at Lakehead, and I applied, and my qualifications brought me here in 1978.
1978.
Half my lifetime has been spent in Thunder Bay, or close to it, and the fact that I was a member of Parliament for 4 of those years, 84, 88. When the university was recognizing service at one point in the 90s, I was really touched that they included my service as MP in the total number of years I had served the university. A lovely touch.
Well, so there's a number of things you've done, as well as being an academic. You were elected here in Thunder Bay as our federal member of Parliament.
That's right.
And
yes.
What were those years?
84, September 84 to November, December 88. The first Mulrooney Parliament, if I may label it that.
So you must have picked up some tricks along the way there, or some kind of useful information to kind of filter back into your work as an academic.
Well, I learned a good deal about the way in which government works. Initially, if you're a Canadian historian and with years of British history as well, you go to Parliament thinking that, I know how this works. I don't need a lot of briefing about the working constitution and so on and so forth. But you still learn things. I remember talking to someone one day who said, the deputy minister in the department has a great deal of power. When David Crombie said was Minister of Indian Affairs, he'd made promises to chiefs and then discovered that the deputy minister would not follow through on these promises. And of course the deputies are led by the clerk of the Privy Council, who is in effect the deputy to the Prime Minister. And so in the Prime Minister, first of all the Privy Council office, but then the Prime Minister's office is there as well, the political and against the institutional. When they decide that a minister's made a promise that isn't in the national interest in their view, the poor minister can only go home and sulk or whatever he chooses to do. So those are the sorts of things that one learns while one is on the Hill. I learned a great deal about how it works and played my own modest part, including I was checking Hansard the other day for some changes that happened in 85, 86, actually the treatment of the unemployment insurance fund, and spotted a speech of mine on a budget bill and scanned the speech quickly and said to myself, well, I still mostly agree with all of that. Not so good that I photocopied it on the spot, but it's nice to know that almost 30 years later, what had developed in my mind in terms of understanding of our fiscal arrangements were ones that I have now been expanding upon and deepening my knowledge.
So I too am a lover of history. I've never really pursued to that level as you have, which is great, and also a student of politics and political life in Canada. Yeah. So it's so great to have you on to kind of share some of those insights. So as you say, looking back 30 years ago, you were already interested in the whole issue of finance and budgeting, and you're now working on a project, the science of public finance. Tell me, why did you now choose? Here you are retired. You could just, go to Florida and kick your your feet up. But here you are working away. What got you so motivated to take on this project?
It's hard to say what mix of motivations went into that. Last fall, thinking towards the next election and thinking about the importance of having a progressive government that would meet so many of the social justice needs of the people of this country. I think that would be the central motivation, and one could find other things around that. But in the first order, having a couple of trips to Toronto to make by air, I took Linda McQuaig's Behind Closed Doors with me about what happened in Parliament and in government through the 60s and 70s, Kenneth Carter's Royal Commission on Taxation and his recommendation of comprehensive taxation, and the fact that that wasn't done. And as I brooded over the consequences, inadequate revenue to meet the needs of the country, the fact that the healthcare expenditures were being shifted into the public budget, and if the government did not have the means to fund that properly, provincial governments would find themselves under increasing pressure. And so I decided to develop that argument in a website, which is out there now, has been since March or April, www.taxwealth.ca.
Okay, we'll put that on the screen for our viewers to see.
And people can look into that to see the argument that I make, an argument that is based in economic theory, as I understand it, the importance of government leadership, particularly in times of slow business and recession and so on and so forth, but the importance of taxing and spending carefully in order to meet the needs of the country. And then I decided with that...
Just hang on to that thought there.
We need
to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us.